for 8 years. The balance, my office produced a budget, and it would balance over 5 years. It does it by cutting spending, not raising taxes, but you cut and you have to eliminate departments that were never intended to be in Washington, that the Constitution does not speak of, nor does the Constitution authorize. Education. It's a state and local function, not a federal function. Energy. The Department of Energy doesn't produce any energy. It just consumes taxpayer dollars. It doesn't produce anything. The Department of Commerce flies around CEOs who average $7 million a year in salary, flies them around looking for deals in Europe and Asia. I'm not against people making a lot of money. I hope people make, I'd love for all of you to make a lot of money, but not at the taxpayer expense. There's no reason to fly CEOs and the head of Exxon and Mobil, not flying them to Europe. It's sort of insulting what they've done to us. If you look at the bank bailout, that's what got me motivated to run for office. I think it spawned a lot of the Tea Party, was them bailing out the banks. Well, we finally got an audit of the Federal Reserve, not a real one, but a partial one for 1 year, and we found out where some of the money went. You say, well, we had to bail out these American companies. Well, you know what it did is it went to that American company, went right in one door and right out another door and was sent somewhere else. When they bailed out AIG, we spent $180 billion just on AIG. 87 foreign banks were bailed out, including a little bank in Libya that's owned by Colonel Gaddafi. Your taxpayer money went all around the world. The other thing is that, like I say, I don't have any trouble with someone making $10 million a year or $50 million a year, but I don't want to pay for their salary. And if they make bad decisions, they should either go bankrupt or not make that much money the next year. Instead, we went from a situation where those people didn't suffer at all and are already making $100 million a year. In fact, remember when AIG was first given the bailout? What was the first thing they did with the first 200 grand they got from us? They went to a spa and had their nails done. I guess hot rocks placed on back. I don't know what all they got done, but 200 grand worth. But it's really the crime that's going on in Washington. And then we get to this debt ceiling, and they say it's about August 2nd we have to do. It really was never about August 2nd because we have plenty of revenue to pay. But they made it about August 2nd because they want to scare you into submission. They want to scare you into acknowledging, here's the checkbook, just do whatever you want. The stock market collapsed in the week before the debt ceiling raised and a week after the debt ceiling, and it's still kind of doing this yo-yo motion. The stock market is not pundits on TV, it's not MSNBC, it's not CNN, it's not Fox. It's millions, hundreds of millions of people with their money voting every day. And they all voted a vote of no confidence for Timothy Geithner and for this president. Formally ask for a vote of no confidence. Now, we don't usually do that in our country. It's the way they get rid of a prime minister in European systems. But we can have a vote of no confidence. It doesn't mean we can get rid of Timothy Geithner, but we can send a signal. And it's happened before. There have been votes calling for people to resign from office. So far, there's no objective evidence that this president gets it or that Timothy Geithner gets it. In fact, I blame Geithner and Bernanke for the housing crisis. They were doing bad policy. There are going to be ramifications of what we've done. Still ramifications to come from the bank bailout. During the bank bailout, one measure of the money supply is called the monetary base. It doubled in 4-month period. I tell people, you know, once upon a time your dollar was backed by gold. You could exchange your dollar for gold. The next 30 or 40 years after that, your dollar was backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. Still paper, but people trusted treasury bills. Now you know what your dollar's backed by? Those $2 trillion, they bought dollars with it. So that's what your dollar's backed by. Toxic assets, stuff no one else would buy. Used car loans, not just used car loans, bad used car loans that the people were in default. Bad home loans, people were underwater in default. Your government bought those loans. Those are still out there, and they're owned by the U.S. government now. It's a mess. It's getting worse. We've done nothing to correct it. You say, well, we got a debt ceiling deal. The deal's supposed to fix our country. We're going to cut $2 trillion in spending. We're not going to cut any spending. When they tell you they're going to cut spending, it's cutting from proposed increases. The CBO baseline, which is the Congressional Budget Office, has a baseline. Spending goes up 7 to 7.5% every year. So when they tell you they're going to cut, they're cutting from a baseline that's going up. If we follow the baseline, what they are planning on spending, they will add $9 trillion to the debt over the next 10 years. That's what they're planning on. If they cut $2 trillion from that, they're still going to add $7 trillion to the debt. We owe $14 trillion now. Within a decade, if the economy lasts that long, if we can consume and borrow that much money, it'll be well over $20 trillion by the time we reach the end of the decade. I fear that we cannot last that long, that it's not sustainable. I think we have to have a change before then. We need somebody new in the White House. There's just no question about it. We've got to have someone new in the White House. We are currently spending $100,000 a second. Of that, we're borrowing $40,000 a second. How anybody thinks we can continue along this pace is beyond me. If we do nothing, we spend on that curve, we borrow $9 trillion more. If we do nothing, the entire budget within a decade is consumed by entitlements and interest. There's no money left for national defense, there's no money left for roads, there's no money left for anything. It's coming. If interest rates rise, right now we're paying off most of our debt with 2.5% interest. Historically, we've had more closer to an average of 5.5%. If interest rates rise by 1 point, it adds $1.3 trillion to the debt over a decade. If growth is less than expected, it adds considerably also. Most of the projections that still have us adding $9 trillion to the debt include growth of about 3.5%. You know what the latest growth rate was? 1.3. If we grow at 1% instead of 3.5%, that adds another $9 trillion to the $9 trillion we're already adding. It's not very hard to envision interest rates going up a point, and it's not very hard to imagine that the anemic growth rate we have now continues. That's the bad news. Anybody want to hear the good news? The good news is that we have an amazingly resilient system. There's something about freedom, there's something about individual liberty, there's something about our founding documents and what our country was based on that is incredible. The engine of capitalism is incredibly strong. It chugs along despite all of these things being thrown at it. It's threatened by it. The regulations stifle business opportunity, the taxes stifle entrepreneurship, but it still keeps going. We have an incredible engine that's created more wealth than any civilization ever. We have an engine of capitalism that's created more charitable giving than any civilization ever. There is an amazing power still in our system, but we've got to get rid of the people stopping it. We've got to get rid of the people placing the obstacles. But I still have confidence that we can grow out of this, that we can have renewed growth and creation of jobs if we just once again believe in ourselves. We can't believe that it's somebody else's business to take care of my mother or somebody else's business to take care of my brother. It's my business. It's not somebody in Idaho. It's not somebody in Washington. We have to believe in ourselves again. We get back to work by getting government out of the way, not believing that there is a free lunch, believing that you get there through good old-fashioned hard work. I have great confidence in America. I hope you'll continue to have confidence in me for, I think I can last another year or two probably. But I hope you'll continue to support me, continue to support the cause, and make sure that you're roaring loud enough that Harry Reid can hear you in Washington. Thank you.